So hello and welcome back to A Tale of Genetic Code. What we'll be doing today is slightly different because we've already started our journey on into the world of genetics. What is something which we have not touched upon is how to make sense of what we're going to learn, right? Because we're going to potentially learn a huge volume of data, and what becomes quickly overwhelming is how to actually remember, organize, and apply all of this information. And tools exist that can help us with these things, but the knowledge of them often comes too late. And we would have already covered a lot of material, and it would be really, really expensive in terms of time and effort to actually go back and start using them from the beginning again. So that is what I wanted to address in today's video before we move on, because we're going to make a lot of videos in the coming days. So this is something I wanted to get out of the way, uh, which I think will be really helpful as well. So what we'll be doing in today's video is seeing what are the different tools that people tend to use, and the pros and cons of each of the types of note taking, and what I have found to be the best method that suits my requirements. And hopefully, uh, in listening to all of this, you will be able to figure out what works the best for you, because it may not be the same thing that works for everybody, which I have realized over time. But at least what I want to put across in this video is what works for me. And in the next video, I'll be showing you a basic setup of Obsidian. And in that video, I'll also be attaching a link to download the basic Obsidian with all its plugins and all installed, at least the basic ones, which I use in my day-to-day note taking and learning. So with that being said, let's start with today's video. So yes, there are many ways to take notes, but how would you know whether the notes you're taking are good or not? Because the usability of the note is often determined in retrospect, right? So now, when I need to access some information which I require to use for whatever purpose, and I have the set of notes that I have made, if that set of notes is helping me in solving the problem which I'm facing right now, then that's a really good note. And while different ways of taking notes might be more or less useful in specific scenarios, by and large, we can generalize as to what kind of notes are going to be useful in a wide variety of situations, right? And that is what form the criteria for my ideal notes. So the first thing that I've written here is that there must be absolutely no resistance to taking those notes, in the sense that suppose that you are trying to lucid dream, and you are making notes of the kinds of dreams that you have and the details of those dreams, then that would be something you would want to do the moment you get up, right? So you're having a dream, you wake up, and you want to immediately jot that dream down. But if you are having to search for a pen and a paper and turn on the light when you want to record your dream, it is likely that you'll forget the details of the dream in the interval that it takes to get these things uh, together, right? So that would, in my definition, form the resistance to taking notes, and that is something which requires to be minimized. The second thing is that it should be easily searchable. So you might take a lot of notes because it is very easy to take notes for you, but if you're not able to look through them and find the information that you require in fractions of a second or a few seconds tops, uh, probably that is not a good way of taking notes, because uh, the engagement with material decreases with the amount of time it takes to actually get what you want. And that is something which people have built upon to a great extent. In fact, it is said that if it takes more than 3 seconds to do something, then you're probably not going to do it. Especially this is relevant with social media in the concepts of hooks, where you need to grab somebody's attention in the first 3 seconds of the video, or you're not going to keep them watching your entire video and stuff like that. But It is also relevant to some extent to what you are doing in terms of learning and making notes because you would want to do it in a manner that engages you as well. So this is something to keep in mind. So while low resistance refers to the amount of pre-work you need to do to actually start making notes, ease of making notes refers to the uh, level of difficulty of the actual task of making notes. So maybe that the task has high resistance in the sense of gathering the material that is required for you to actually start making notes, but the process of making notes might be really easy for you. So given the ideal scenario where everything is collected and kept in one place, you might be uh, finding it really easy to just make a lot of notes. So that is also something you need to keep in mind because all these things can be optimized and maybe just keeping things together is going to do a really great job for your dream journal, right? The next is device flexibility. So what this actually means is how available your notes are at different points of time and space for you to go through them, right? If you have a really vast set of notes that you can only keep in your room, then its utility is quite limited, right? You can think of several scenarios where you might want that material to be available at a moment's notice in the pocket on the screen of your phone, right? So whatever notes you take must be available across devices. You must be able to probably log in through some computer, some external computer, and maybe even there be able to access your notes. So that is something also to keep in mind. And that brings us to another important idea of local storage, because there are several tools today that actually store data on the cloud. While it might be a great idea for inter-device accessibility, there is often a time lag to access those notes because the system has to download it first before it can display. Uh, Moreover, what this does is actually it keeps your data in a third party's control, right? So, for example, if tomorrow Notion shuts down for some reason, then I'm not sure what happens to all my notes, whether I'll be able to download them and use them in any uh, good manner if the entire interface of Notion is not available to me. So that is something you need to keep in mind when you're using digital devices to actually make your notes. And for call me old-fashioned, but I would like it best if my notes are available on the device that I'm using them. That gives me a sense of comfort. And of course, that does not mean that they should reside only here. You should always synchronize your data with some form of a cloud service so that it is available in case something happens to your primary storage, right? And then that also ties in neatly to the concept of reliable access, which we have kind of discussed. But what it just means is that when you want it, your data is available. And something which we don't think of too much is how time-proof our notes are, because we usually take notes in real time and we access them in the vicinity of this time period, and we don't usually think of them as something which you need to carry for, say, a year or 2 years, 10 years. And this is something which probably when you're reading something like genetics or medicine, you need to be really conscious about because you cannot, like I said before, expend so much energy every time by starting off uh, from the scratch when you're shifting to a new mode of taking notes, right? So what is done is done. You might start making the notes from today, from the for the things that you're reading from today. But what you have done in the past 10 years, you might never actually be able to put into your notes. So that is something which is very important, and it is difficult to actually transfer usually from one tool to another, all the set of your notes that you've made. So thinking all of this beforehand is probably going to help you make better choices in the present. With that being said, I want to just take you through the journey of how I discovered the tool that actually works for me nowadays, and uh, what are the mistakes I made on the way, so that probably you can decide what works best for you as well. So, like most of us, I started taking handwritten notes. I did not require many notes in school apart from what was already being written in the class, and it worked great when I was doing my plus two and preparing for my entrance for MBBS. That required extensive notes, and not being familiar with any other tools, I was still following the paper and pen approach. What that quickly did was that it overwhelmed me quite thoroughly. The amount of material that I wanted to be in front of me was uh, too great, in the sense that I wanted to refer many different books at the same time. So I was writing things on papers and sticking them on the walls so that there's more surface area on which I can uh, put these notes and look at when I'm reading. So at one point, I remember there were two walls of my room that were entirely filled with just my notes, and that was pretty crazy. But come MBBS and increase in volume of the amount that I want to read, I realized that this approach is no longer going to work, and I started exploring more digital ways of doing it. So what happens when you take digital notes is that one, it feels very uncomfortable when you're especially coming from taking handwritten notes, because that is something very palpable and tangible, right? You can see the notes that you have taken, you can feel and touch them, you can feel the weight of the notes, and it gives you a sense of satisfaction when you are able to see them in the physical world. That is not true with the digital platforms for note taking, for obvious reasons. But this is something that you need to get to terms with because of the sheer impracticality of taking physical notes. And uh, a lot of people might disagree with me, and they do. I keep having these conversations quite often, but people who are really serious about note taking eventually decide to let go of their requirement to see these notes physically, and eventually turn in favor of digital forms of note taking. So I'm not asking you to not explore your options, but definitely I feel that by and large, most serious note takers eventually move to digital notes. And these are some of the tools that I have tried. I started off obviously with OneNote, and I found that it was great. This was back in 2013, and I made a different notebook for every subject, and I was making separate sections and pages and taking long form notes. I was seeing what kind of questions are asked in exams, and I was preparing notes for them. And I was even syncing these notes and accessing them on my phone. And all of this was great until I realized that there are some key features that are lacking. And it was not that I knew some other tool that had these features, but it is just that at that point I felt that these are really required and they're not available. So, for example, the same thing that you're learning in physiology or anatomy would uh, have some relevance in biochemistry, especially in something you're reading in, say, anatomy, how a muscle functions, and something related to its physiology. Then that aspect, that common point, that point would get repeated twice. And if I wanted to update a note somewhere, then there would be two, three places where I would actually have to upload them, update them, uh, because I didn't know where I would access them the next time from. And having a rigid hierarchy of different notebooks and different sections and pages actually made it very difficult for me to find where all these things reside when I wanted to search for my notes. So searchability was an issue, and uh, linking of different notes for actually gaining insights as to which part, which concepts, and which facts seem to be connected. That seemed to be lacking in OneNote. And even though I did not have this insight at that point, but the idea of taking notes in OneNote started to become less and less attractive. And you will see this a lot in my journey that I actually started off expecting really great things from a tool, and then eventually I realized its limitations, and then I completely stopped using them. And what has actually happened when I did this was that once I realized that a tool was not working for me, I actually stopped reading because I could not understand how what I'm reading will be available to me, say, 10 years from now, because I wanted to have that kind of a clarity before I started actually investing my time in reading and taking notes. And that has always kept me on my toes, searching for new tools and better methods of doing things. And that is when I came across things like Evernote, but it also suffered the same limitations. Uh, so I did not use Evernote for a long time. Then Anki was something which everybody was using at that time. I don't know why. But the concept of flashcards seemed to have caught up quite well at that time. And there were decks available for different subjects, and even in medicine, that I could just download and start reading. They were really well made decks of thousands and thousands of cards. And I additionally made thousands of cards by myself. And while I used it for a long time extensively, what I realized is that the kind of information that Anki was made to learn is quite different from the kind of information that I'm trying to learn, because unless you have a deep understanding of what you're learning, then the actual memory of the fact does not serve much purpose. And eventually, I gave up on Anki as well. But if you're doing something that makes flashcards a great way of learning it, then I think there's no other place you have to go to. Anki is the one, and Anki is pretty great. The different kinds of notes that you can take, you can do fill in the blanks, close deletions, you can do uh, image occlusion, and there are all these amazing like card reversal and all. So that is pretty great. Anki is pretty great if flashcards is something that you're looking for. But I realized that for medicine and even for genetics, flashcards are not going to be super useful. So I eventually gave up on Anki. And what happened after that is that I was completely lost because now I had no way of taking notes. All these other things that I was doing, I exhausted. And I was still actively looking for ways to take notes, which is when I came across GoodNotes 5. And while I had my qualms with taking physical notes, what I realized was the sheer uh, you know, uh, allure of well-written notes, well-looking notes. Like, they look great. You could put stickers on those notes. You could save those stickers to be used later all throughout the rest of your notes, and that made some consistency. And there was a great visual appeal to GoodNotes 5. In fact, I have never used an Apple device before, and when I saw that GoodNotes 5 offered all these great features and it looked so great, I eventually bought an iPad and started making notes. And this was quite recent. This was just 2.5 years back when I used GoodNotes 5 predominantly for my DM entrance. And it was great. I made a lot of notes and everything was okay till I actually joined the DM course. And other people asked me for my notes. And when I tried to export it, I realized the sheer size of small amount of notes, relatively small amount of notes that I had taken, and that would go on the order of GBs, gigabytes, very quickly, right? And that was something that I was super uncomfortable with because uh, I am thinking of taking notes potentially for a lifetime with such a tool, and if they are going to get so big, notes are going to get so big, then definitely searchability will suffer at some point or another. And that is why even though I could put all my textbooks inside of GoodNotes 5 and I could highlight and annotate them with handwritten notes, I realized that GoodNotes 5 is not the thing that I'm looking for. And luckily, I found Notion soon enough. But Notion also had the rigid file hierarchies and uh, the con of actually being completely online, although it has a downloadable version as well, but it does not store it in any usable manner, your notes inside your physical computer. So eventually, I don't know, maybe just Notion did not vibe with me. I think that is the term which people use these days. So I stopped using Notion almost as soon as I realized there is something called Obsidian in the picture, right? So Obsidian is great. It is not perfect. It is not perfect. I think you'll find it really difficult to uh, get something that checks all your boxes, but it checks most of my boxes. And what it does, we'll be exploring in more detail subsequently in the next video. But to give you a brief idea, Obsidian makes it extremely easy to take notes. I don't have to decide where a note should reside when I'm creating it. If I'm coming across some idea, then I can immediately start taking a note without having to think about where it fits, where it does not fit, and stuff. I can put all my textbooks and reference material inside my vault and access it at a click of a button. What I can also do is take notes as I'm highlighting text on my reference material, right? So that is something extremely great. What I can also do with Obsidian is I can bring together information from various sources. So, for example, I can put web links and I can make it so that the uh, content is displayed within my notes. What I can do is I can make presentations in Obsidian. So, this presentation that you're watching right now, it was made in Obsidian. And something really cool that you can do in Obsidian is you can visualize how your notes are connected by something called graph. So what you're seeing here is actually uh, graph, the graph of my third vault. So initially I had tried two different methods of taking notes within Obsidian. And eventually, my note taking skills have also slightly improved because I was initially taking long form notes, which are probably not the way you should be taking notes, and that we'll be discussing in the next video. But this represents the entire structure of the notes I've taken. And while it looks good, it might not be really useful right now. But what I found useful with respect to graphs is the local graph, where Obsidian displays the notes that are immediately linked to the note I'm reading or making. So that is these are some things that Obsidian does, and I honestly can live with this. So there are great new features that are coming up. People are looking at ways in which I can include large language models within Obsidian so that the entire vault becomes the context for the large language model, and I can chat with it uh, in the form of querying my database of notes. And there are several such features that are just coming up, and it is possible to do them today, by the way. But I don't use Obsidian for these purposes as of now. But for everything else, Obsidian really does an amazing job, and we'll be seeing this in greater detail in the next video. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.